I'm Steve from This Week with Cars, and surrounding me is a few of my Minis. Minis were built in many different body styles, and they also came badged by many different manufacturers such as Austin, Morris, Riley, and Leyland, as well as many others throughout the world. To my right is my 1966 Austin Mini Cooper S. This is the classic Mini style that most people are familiar with. And right here is my 1967 Austin Countryman, or Woody Wagon as we would call them here in the United States. This car has almost a station wagon style to it, with wood paneling strapped to the sides. And then over here is my 1964 Austin Mini Moke. The design for the Moke was originally created for military use, but when it was a failure at military tasks, it became a cult icon as a passenger car, and Austin continued to make it for the public market for many years. Electric-powered Mokes are still built today. But the Moke was not the only open-air Mini that was built, and that's what today's video is about. And that is because I may have found the rarest Mini that was ever built. The car on the end there is a 1964 Morris beach car, which I found in a barn here in Iowa where it had been sitting for the last 30 years. Before I get into the specifics of this car, I should tell you the history of the beach cars. Beach cars were not a new concept to BMC or the rest of the world. Many are very familiar with the Fiat Jolly, probably the most successful beach car that has ever been created. Before BMC produced the Austin beach cars in 1962, they had already produced a few other beach cars, such as the Austin A40 beach car, which had a roof and no windows, wicker seats, but it still had doors on it. One of the most iconic features of beach cars is that they usually have wicker seats, and this car does have wicker seats, but it has seat covers on them right now. When Austin decided they wanted to build a beach car from the Mini, they built two prototypes, one with the classic Mini body and another with an extended trunk on the back. After the two prototypes, Austin built 14 production Austin beach cars in 1962. Of those, the two prototypes still exist, as well as 7 of the production cars. This car was built by BMC in November 1963. This car was number 3 in a group of 4 more beach cars that were created. Of that group of 4 cars, only 1 car was built as a Morris. The other 3 were built as Austins. This is car number 3 of that group of 4 cars, of which is the only example known to still survive, being a Mini of a configuration that's 2 years newer than the other Austin beach cars that survive. This one is a little bit different than those. A strange feature on a beach car, according to the British Motors Heritage Trust Certificate, the heater that this car is equipped with was equipped from the factory. Also, according to the Heritage Certificate, this car was originally white with a red roof, which correlates the story that goes along with this car. I have a copy of the original 1964 title for this car, showing that the original owner of this car was August A. Busch. Now that name might sound familiar to you because that is Gussie Busch of the Anheuser-Busch company. And it gets better than that because the address listed on the title is that of Grant's Farms. This is the place where they kept the famous horses that you see in the Budweiser commercials. Gussie Busch owned this car for 20 years, from 1964 until 1984. And during that time, Grant's Farm was more of a zoo and an amusement park. Open-air vehicles like this were all over Grant's Farms, from trains that people could ride in around the park to Volkswagen Things, which are of a similar concept to the Austin beach car. The story goes that Gussie Busch bought the car and had it painted Budweiser red. So essentially, from new, this car has been painted red its whole life. I have been in touch with the archivist for Anheuser-Busch and Grant's Farm, but unfortunately they could not provide me any pictures of this car in use at the park. If you had visited Grant's Farm between 1964 and 1984, maybe had seen this car or even taken pictures of this car, I would love to hear your story and see those pictures. Besides the color change, there are also a few weird modifications on this car, and I think those were done for Gussie for use at the amusement park. I'll give you a closer look at this car. Getting up close to the car, you can see the Morris badge on the front of it, something that none of the other beach cars have. The grills on the Morrises were also a little bit different. You can see right now it has seat covers on it, and I believe that these were done because Gussie wanted them done. You can see underneath them that the wicker seats are still intact in there. One interesting thing on the Heritage Certificate is that it listed it as red wicker seats. Now I'm not sure if the wicker is actually red or if it's just referring to this red metal frame underneath the seats. So if anyone has any information on that, let me know. Obviously the seat belts on this car are not original. I should note there was a box there underneath the driver's seat. This may be some special radio equipment that they used at Grant's farm. Not really sure what that was for. There's also some strange speakers that are mounted in the back of the car. My thought is that this is some sort of PA system that was used for communication around Grant's farm, but I'm not sure about that. The controls are very standard for an 850 Mini. This car does have a heater, which is pretty strange for a beach car. None of the others were equipped with a heater. Coming around the back of the car, you can see the Morris badge on the trunk there. When Anheuser-Busch sold this car, he traded it to Dave Ostrom Imports in Des Moines, Iowa, and that's how the car made its way to Iowa. Inside the boot, you can see the car was originally white. Only a single fuel tank, just like a 850 Mini would have. It looks like they wanted to make sure that anybody working on the car knew that it was positive ground. I am the one that put the more modern battery on there. For now, I'm going to leave these seat covers on. I'm not really sure what the wicker is going to look like underneath them, and I'm also not sure what period of history is most significant for this car. If this car is pretty important history for Grant's farm, and he had these seat covers on him, it may be important to leave them. So right now, I'm not going to touch any parts of the car that have been modified. And speaking of modifications, another modification that was done is this is actually the starter switch. They took one of the dimmer switches for the high-low beams, stuck it on the floor, and that right there runs the starter now. I'm not sure why they did that. I'm not sure if the original solenoid went bad or Gussie just felt more comfortable having it there. Maybe it was more like some of the other equipment that they had there. Under the bonnet is a standard 850 Mini engine. You can see the intake over there for the heater. There is no brake booster on this car. I have checked all the numbers and the chassis numbers on this car, and they do match the Heritage Certificate, so this is all original. Before I get to the task of starting this car, I think I should clean off the decades of dirt and dust first. Well, it appears this car is going to clean up pretty well. Since this is the only Morris Beach car to exist, and it seems that everyone has forgotten that a Morris Beach car was even built, this video will be the first reference of any Morris Beach car on all of the internet. If you have any more information about this car, or if you would like to see more videos in the series of this car, comment below and click subscribe. The next time I come back with this car, I hope to have a whole lot more information, and maybe we'll even get it running and driving.